Okay, hello, welcome to my first video. My name is Hannah, and the first series of videos I'm going to be reading my book that I've published on Wattpad. My name is 16 Author. This is my first video, and I'm going to be reading my book that I've published. It's called Lottie. And so I'm going to be reading the first chapter in the video today, which is called Lesbian Anne. Okay, chapter 1. Ella. My eyes skimmed over notes, my hand aching, scrawled another formula, my writing becoming harder and harder to read as I wrote more. I dropped my pen and rubbed my sleepy eyes, blinking hard, to stop the low, quiet lull of the book-filled room and the days of boring work to rock me asleep. The neatly typed print of my thick math book blurred, the numbers and shapes waving magically as my eyelids drooped. It was propped open again in front of me, with one of my hands jammed in the middle to stop the monstrously heavy book from closing. My fingers strained with the effort to keep it open. I picked up my black erasable pen with aching fingers to finish the last few diagrams. A soft scrape seared through my train of thought, and I quickly picked up the mathematical equations off the floor of my brain and to scribble them down, once more trying to keep a certain level, if not of tidiness, then legibility. I squinted harder at the tiny print below the parallelogram I was currently figuring out the radial symmetry of, when I felt a soft brush of fingertips across my back. Startled, I jerked my head upward, the world blurred as my glasses slid down my nose. I shoved my glasses up and swept aside a curtain of hair. Hey there, busy bee. Lottie was half perched on the table in front of me. She smiled and her cat-like green eyes twinkled mischievously. My heart skipped a beat. What was she doing in here? She was in the year below and wasn't allowed in the library today. It wasn't as if it was packed, though. I scanned the deserted room before settling my gaze on the librarian. Her disapproving gaze held a certain affection, but nevertheless we needed to leave. Sorry, I flashed an apologetic smile as I gathered my books and dragged Lottie out into the corridor. I placed my stern gaze on her, trying not to notice how the window behind her made the tips of her crazy red hair turn to gold and dance about as if on fire, or how the window also made her eyes a deeper, darker green as they twinkled cheekily at me. She caught my hand as we strolled down the corridor. Lottie was on the verge of giggling hysterically, but calmed herself down before apologizing. Sorry, she caught a tuft of my hair and tucked it gently behind my ear. My breath caught as she slowly drew her hand away. I'm truly sorry that I got you in trouble, Ella, but I couldn't wait to tell you that I've finally decided what I'm going to do next year. Her eyes that danced and twinkled with glee belied her apology, but I didn't care. She was practically bouncing on her heels with excitement. Lottie! I knew my faked exasperated tone couldn't fool Lottie. Of course she was better than my math homework. She was better than just about anything, but I couldn't tell her that. I heaved a sigh. I was busy. She waved off my feeble attempt at excuses. Okay, I know, but since you're mad at me, I won't scold you for calling me Lottie again, so call it even. I smiled. Lottie could always make me smile. I tugged lightly on her fiery braid. She wanted me to call her Charlotte because she wanted to seem grown up, but she hadn't changed her twin braid hairstyle since she had grown out her hair long enough to plait them. Oh, I'm not mad, Lottie. I couldn't be mad at you. I beamed at her and stammered on to change the mood. But you did remind me, and you can't make me not call you Lottie and scold me? What am I, 4? I've called you Lottie since I was 4. Don't grow up too fast. I'm not, but such a lot of things have changed since then. She laced her fingers through mine as she said it. I felt a little shock go through me as she held my hand. We've changed so much. I sighed. Lottie had no idea how true this was. Over the last few years I had wanted more than our friendship, but I had always known it was not something she reciprocated, and it was the one thing that divided us, the invisible barrier that was stronger than age or distance. It was something I just wished things could be different, that she could some way feel the same way about me. Lottie. The cool silence of the building gave way to the ruckus and heat of the packed playground. As always, you had to delicately dance your way through the mismatched arrays of skip rope, football, and basketball games that cluttered at the outside of the school. Ducking and weaving through the tangle, we dropped down onto the brightly painted benches which had been the seniors' class project. Unknown names were carved into the sunny surface of the bench. I ran my hand along these grooves as Ella started to speak to me. So you were telling me? I noticed she had slipped her hand from mine as she reached down to pat her hair, which forever stuck up in small tufts around her heart-shaped oval face like a black mane. My hand still burnt from her touch as if she had marked me with a brand. Uh-huh. I tried not to be distracted by her steely grey eyes searching my face. I twirled a braid around my fingers as I spoke. Let's see. DT, drama, DT, enterprise, and Spanish. I counted off the subjects as I spoke. What do you think? Ella bit her lip in contemplation. She tugged at the end of her midnight black hair, and stormy grey eyes magnified behind her large frames darted, fixing on nothing. It was most interesting to watch Ella when she had her thinking face on. She was so involved inside her own head then that she wouldn't notice what I was doing, but I was relieved all the same when the long, awaited smile broke out, lighting up her face, at which the smiley lemon-coloured sun burst out between the angry storm clouds that had formerly cluttered the sky of her expression. When Ella smiled, she lit up my world and I fell apart. But she didn't know what effect she had on me, and probably wouldn't consider dating someone younger than her, let alone me. I knew she liked girls, the whole school did, but we never talked about crushes and lovey-dovey stuff anymore, which was good since I couldn't lie to Ella. I leant back on the neon bench and sliding down and stretched my feet out so my head balanced on the top of the back of the bench. Ella picked up at the dry paint absent-mindedly. I slipped into a memory as an uplifting, gentle breeze crept through the blistering heat. I was 6 and Ella was 7. Ella pounded on the door as in a way that only she could, so that I knew at once it was her. I bolted downstairs so that I could get to the door before my mum. Hey, Els! I beamed as I opened the door. Even back then, Ella was my whole world, just in a different way. Come over, Ella demanded. I never questioned Ella's reasons for asking me to do things when I was little. What am I talking about? I rarely question her now. Going to Ella's, I shouted back to my mum. I shrugged on my coat and slammed the door after me, before waiting for my mum's okay. I didn't even bother to put on a helmet as I hopped on my bike and raced to Ella's apartment. Ella smiled at me as she ran beside me, her bare feet slapping on the boiling stones as I biked through the streets of the guarded complex we used to live in. We got to her apartment after panting up 6 flights of stairs. Okay, what is it? I asked impatiently why we were here. In my room, Ella explained hastily. She dragged me through to her room, then she pointed at the Katy Perry poster on her wall. It was new. The only appeal was that it was shiny and that I had never seen it before. After a while, I grew bored and wanted to play. What's the big deal? I asked. It's a singer. I didn't see the big deal. Ella smacked her forehead. She tutted like a teacher and spoke in a soft tone of assured correction. She's not just a singer. She's only the most beautiful person ever. I'm going to marry her. Ella gazed up adoringly as she stroked the glitzy poster. Her voice changed from the word beautiful into one of love towards the poster. I frowned. But she's not a boy. I thought girls were supposed to marry boys, I asked. Ella looked as if she was going to tell me I was wrong again, as if her face was going to get redder and redder until smoke blew out of her ears like a kettle. Instead, surprisingly, she burst into tears, thick, ugly tears that told you something was truly wrong, tears of grief, something I had never seen at that age, something no one should have had at that age. That's what my mum said. She said, Ella Ann Webber, this is just a phase that you're going to marry a lovely man when you grow up and you're going to give me beautiful children. But my dad said my mum's just adjusting and I could love whoever I want. Anyone who doesn't appreciate me for who I am can go away. So if you don't like that I like girls, you can get out. Ella stopped crying, turning off suddenly like a tap, and glaring at me and pointed to her door. Her expression was as stony and frozen as a statue. She was never someone you could say no to. I smiled at her and sat next to her on her bed. Els, your mum is a meanie, and I won't be like your mum, and I definitely won't lose you over being ignorant. So like girls, it's the clever choice anyway, as boys are smelly, I stated all matter of fact. Ella hugged me. Good, I couldn't bear if I had to lose you. It would be the worst if you were homophobic and hated lesbians. Ella beamed at my confused look. Ella explained, lesbians are girls who like girls. That's what I am. I asked one final question so that we could start playing and leave the mushy stuff. But Els, I like you. Does that mean I'm a lesbian, Anne? She shook her head. Lottie, when I say I like girls, I mean romantic, not friend-like. Ella said, I sighed back. Back then, the difference of 1 year had made the gap in our friendship. Had been a gap in our friendship, which sometimes still felt like it hadn't been filled, just less often than then. Ew, I don't like boys that way, or girls. I stuck my tongue out in disgust. That's 'cause you're still a little baby, Ella teased, jumping off her bed and making a funny face at me. Then I lunged and tackled at her, and we rolled around on the floor in hysterics. Ella's teacher tone was long abandoned as we play fought as equals. Lottie bathed in the harsh midday sun, lost in her own little world. She looked so serene and at peace that it pained me to extract her from her reverie. I had to, however, or I'd forget to say the tips I had about enterprise that I knew she'd love to hear. Lottie, Lottie, Lottie. I stared quietly at first, lightly shaking her shoulder, but a nervous edge rose into my voice higher and higher as Lottie's expression stayed the same. Lottie, Lottie! My shouts attracted more attention than I would have liked. Huh? True surprise crossed Lottie's face momentarily before coming back to planet Earth. Oh, sorry? You were saying something? Your opinion matters to me a lot. She blushed, a crimson flush across her face, a shade darker than the auburn fire that licked her pale moon face. She turned away, but I had seen that she had told me more than she meant to. I doused the fire of her embarrassment with the salty tears of sarcasm. No, I know not to waste my breath telling you anything when you're in dream Lottie state. I smirked at her loud, clear laughter that sounded like a bell's tolling. Dream Lottie state? She raised her eyebrows and shrugged. So you can know what I was daydreaming about after you tell me your opinions on my choice, she coaxed. I secretly crossed my fingers behind my back and that her daydream wasn't some boy she was obsessed about, but at least I could know and focus on getting her out of my mind. I've heard bad things about Enterprise, and the history teacher is nicer, and I could help you with your homework, I replied, rambling on. Good idea. Lottie gave in much easier than I thought, and she leant back to look at me, which I was vaguely aware of in my vision. When she sighed, her chest heaved outward and sunk back in. I turned to face her and waited for her to continue. You'll owe me a penny, she said finally. I gave you my thoughts on your subject, which are priceless. I flourished my hands around dramatically as she smiled. Even? I nodded, wishing that she would hurry up and get on with it. I was thinking about when we were little, she smiled sadly at the thought. You were always so sure of yourself even then. I remember the day you defied everyone and what everyone thought and came out. I believe it involved you marrying a poster? Lottie's voice was happy, and so were her words, but it sent me back to a dark time that I'd pushed down for so long, that made my body shake with pain as the wave of repressed self-hate washed over me. I felt like I was underwater, the noise dimmed, and the only thing I could hear was the phrase my mother said, and that young Lottie had said, and that a million people said and will say in my life, but they still stung. Girls don't like girls like boys. Just a phase, you'll get over it. Girls marry boys. You're supposed to like boys, not girls. You can't like her, she's a girl. You're supposed to marry Ella. Ella! Lottie's voice and her hands on my shoulder dragged me from the ocean of despair. Me and my mum were never the same after that. She apologized, but the damage was done. There were conditions to her love. Maybe there always is. Most people just don't push it enough to find out what it is. I don't think there was anything my mum or dad or Lottie could do to make me do that to them. At least in a perfect world, there shouldn't be conditions. Huh? My vision blurred in my hand, and the hand that touched my cheek came away damp. Lottie tried to embrace me, but I shrugged away from her touch. I stumbled inside as some part of my brain acknowledged people pushing past me as my feet took over, and I finally fell to the floor in the bathroom and let myself curl up and cry. I shook uncontrollably for what seemed like a year as every face that told me something was wrong with me, everyone who told me I was wrong, I was different and I shouldn't be this way, for every name they called me, for every bully and for every snicker behind me as I walked, for everything that made me feel like I wasn't good enough. Lottie. I am such an idiot and so selfish. I wouldn't be surprised if Ella never spoke to me again. Ella solely preoccupied my thoughts as I glumly trailed behind her as she hurried inside to cry in the bathroom. I hurried to catch up, but Ella's small frame let her duck and dive around the bustle of students that were herding like cows back to get back inside the building. I soon lost her. Oh, how thoughtless could I be? I forgot about Ella's mum and all the bad stuff in favour of the fact that it would be more likely that Ella liked me back. How cruel could I be to the most important person in my world? No wonder Ella liked me back. I wish she did. Charlotte, do you know the difference between magma and lava? Miss Volcano erupted at me. I giggled inside at the joke I made. The geography teacher was actually called Miss Voliacci, but she got so red when she was mad it made her look like a volcano, not to mention her red, even redder than mine, fiery locks. Miss Voliacci was a new teacher this year, and she was soon renowned for her quick temper. She was Scottish and had only ever taught there. She was young, just a few years out of university. When she came, everyone played up in her classes. The rest of the young teachers in the school were pushovers and demanded no attention, and let particularly boisterous students walk all over them. But Miss Voliacci had soon showed them within a week she was feared and avoided, even by students she didn't teach. Charlotte, the answer? Miss Voliacci smacked her hands down on my table menacingly, her face and red hair dangerously nearing in colour, as her amber eyes blazed with a fire she reserved for the worst of the troublemakers. I thought magma and lava and magma. No, nothing. I really should listen more in geography class. I stared down at the table, reluctant to admit defeat, but unable to fish up an answer from the depths of my brain. No, miss, I don't know, sorry. Miss Voliacci surprisingly retracted her hand from my table without a comment. Okay, what about you, Daisy? She moved on to Daisy, that little goody two-shoes, and went on making teasing looks at me from time to time. Oh, she makes me want to scream, annoying teacher's pet. She was a kid that every class has that reminds you of the teacher that gives out homework. That reminds the teacher to give out homework and tests and knows all the answers. I bit the inside of my cheeks and turned my attention to the work at hand. Only 2 months, then summer, and I'll never have to do geography again. I wasn't giving the lemon slice in front of me the usual attention. None of the yellows in my palette fit the colour of the lemon. I groaned. Eventually, I picked myself up, washed my face, and stomped off to art. My art class was small, but each and every one of them loved art, me included. Art was not the type of class that was an easy choice if you liked nothing else in the period. It was hard work, so you had to be willing to put in the work. I glanced over at the 3 other people in the room, all bent over their work. Angela was observing her orchid, her eyes never leaving it as the black charcoal in her fingers followed the curves exactly. Nina's oil pastels flew under her fingertips, mixing her paper into a blur with the colour of her seascape. Lilies dotted throughout in the style of Monet. Ellie was single-minded in her work, her watercolours splashing as she pieced together a wonderful Van Gogh sunflower. No one could drag her eyes off the painting. None of them batted an eyelash when I walked through the hallway halfway through the lesson. I called us the art zombies because when we're totally into it, the outside world doesn't matter. Mr. Gill walked around us at his slow, steady pace, totally in keeping with the calm energy of his classroom. One of the reasons I looked forward to my art lessons throughout the week. Mr. Gill was a great teacher. He had said nothing when I slumped down into my seat 20 minutes late, looking a wreck. Speaking of, creative juices not flowing today? Mr. Gill inquired. It's okay, just relax and become one with the lemon. He smiled, saying something cheesy and nonsensical to cheer me up. Thanks, but it's not about the creative juices today. I got reminded of something painful. I grimaced. I'll understand if you can't work today. It was phrased almost as a question. Mr. Gill put a comforting hand on my shoulder, which made me want to break down and cry, but I resisted. Thanks, I choked out, closing my mouth instantly to stop the sobs from escaping, but they came anyway. I cried, though I had tried desperately not to. My tears dripped down like rainfall onto the blank page, my paper growing translucent where my tears hit it. Would you like to see Megan? Mr. Gill asked softly as he guided my sobbing, shuddering body out of the room. I nodded my reply and rushed to the office where Megan, the school counsellor, was. I ran inside and hugged her, sitting on the sofa whose stitching and exact curves and cushions I knew only too well over the years. Ella, Megan exclaimed. You poor thing, would you like to stay here a while? I know you have PE next. Want to miss it? She knew me so well. PE was necessary for IGCSE in my school, unfortunately, so missing it would be good. I smiled at her through my tears, and she hurried out of the room to arrange it. So what's up? Megan asked as she sat next to me. Sometimes I felt more at home with Megan in this room than at my own house. Next to Lottie, I confided the most in Megan. She hugged me, and the smell of daisies and talcum powder rose to meet my nose. Her light brown curls tickled my face, and her hazel eyes looked down with concern at me. I'm fine. Nobody's dead. I half laughed. Lottie, she just accidentally reminded me of the time my mum was. I stared determinedly at the sun-baked playground, willing more tears not to impossibly fall from my eyes. I trailed away, but Megan knew what I meant. Oh, honey, it's okay. I know how touchy that subject is for you. Megan enveloped me in her honey-coloured blouse again. Do you want to talk some more, or just sit and read or draw? Whatever you need, honey. She beamed at me. At her undiluted kindness, my eyes brimmed again. I cuddled into her and breathed in her talcum powder mothery smell until a seemingly endless river of tears ran dry. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 1. I'm going to do another video on chapter 2, Jacob, soon.